One day, Milfy sat alone, eating monster meat that she had carefully cooked and shaped into neat loaves. A man from the Empire saw her sitting by herself, and the sight of her enjoying the food caught his attention, especially as hunger had overtaken him. He stepped down from his carriage and approached her, drawn in by the delicious aroma. Milfy was surprised. It was the first time someone had asked to share her monster meat. She quickly opened her container, filled with excitement, and generously offered him some food. The poor man sat beside her and took a small loaf, only to find that the taste surpassed anything he had ever had, feeling as though it was the best thing he had ever eaten. He admired the meat in shock, and noticed the skillful cooking and balanced spices. When he inquired about the type of meat, she replied it was from a Bekran beast. His face paled, and he felt nauseous, as he had never imagined he would eat meat from a deadly creature. A wave of sickness washed over him, but he noticed the faint mockery in her calm smile. He realized he had tasted something feared by people, left her in a hurry, unable to believe what had happened, astonished that a noblewoman would eat such poison-laden meat. As for Milfy, she enjoyed her meal, pleased that the first person to share her food admired the taste of Bekran meat. She continued eating peacefully, explaining that cooked monster meat, when done properly, surpassed the taste of lamb and beef. She wished to find someone who shared her strange passion, someone who understood her love for cooking without seeing her as bizarre. Days passed, and the king hosted a grand feast, inviting all the nobles to choose partners for their influential daughters. The place was filled with well-dressed girls exchanging smiles, showcasing themselves in the best light. As the delicate music began, Milfy stood there, her innocent face and mysterious gaze combining fear and attraction. The girls around her chatted about jewelry, the latest fashion, and the suitors accompanying them. Meanwhile, her mind wandered elsewhere, imagining what mantis monster meat would be like if grilled over a gentle flame. A sarcastic thought crossed her mind. If this wealthy class knew that the monsters they feared could taste better than their meat, their outlook on the world would change. Lady Talbot approached her with an air of superiority, seeing Milfy eating among them like someone starving, and she tried to maintain her appearance before the crowd. Milfy couldn't express that she had come looking for a husband like the other girls. The place didn't feel like her home, and she didn't fit in with those around her. She remembered her stepfather, Count Marshlighter's threat that if she didn't marry within a year, she'd be sent to a convent to live in solitude. Her father had told her at that time that he would accept any knight she chose as long as he suited the family, but she hadn't found anyone in this pretentious world that suited her. Her presence among the aristocrats felt heavy, and whispers followed her every step, as she became known among them as the noble woman who eats monsters. Everyone started to mock her and avoid her until her reputation was ruined. She ignored that and fled toward the knights, seeking a man who wouldn't recognize her, hoping he might accept her. While she was there, a horrifying scream erupted as a terrifying monster emerged from the forest, causing panic and turning the music into chaos. People fled like frightened birds. In the midst of the commotion, Milfy saw two elderly men who had fallen to the ground and couldn't escape. She rushed to them to check on them, but the man's cane was broken, and he couldn't move. She extended her hand to help him, but the beast appeared behind her, massive and predatory, and it was a type she favored, a Bikoran. While everyone else was terrified, her eyes sparkled with admiration as she regarded it as a delicious meal. Realizing time was of the essence, she tried to pull the elderly men to escape. Her only concern was not to leave them behind while trying to draw the beast's attention. At the moment, she thought death surrounded her. A mysterious man wielding a shining sword charged in and decapitated the monster in one strike, and blood splattered everywhere in the ensuing silence. That man was the duke known as the Madman of Blood, a legendary warrior feared throughout the kingdom for his brutality in battle and steely heart. But that night, he revealed another side of himself, as he astonishingly saved Milfy's life. People stood in shock at his power, and Milfy was entranced by his features, seeing in him not terror but a hint of mysterious charm. While everyone whispered in fear, she looked at him with silent admiration, her eyes displaying a strange innocence. When he asked her if she was afraid of him, she noticed what others didn't see in Galbers. While they labeled him a bloodthirsty madman, cruel and merciless, she saw a strange beauty in his face that astonished her. This thought was snatched from her mind when she noticed the monster's blood on his face, and she abruptly ordered him to wash it off quickly, warning that Bikoran blood could be toxic due to the accumulated magical poisons in its body, and just a drop could cause severe stomach and intestinal pain. However, she clarified that this specific monster seemed free from those poisons, and its blood could be used in cooking if prepared properly. Galbers showed no interest in her warnings but was astonished by her precise knowledge of the monster world. Milfy felt a surge of anxiety, fearing her words were weighing heavily on him, so she apologized for talking too much. He handed her a purified water bottle since the monster's blood had also stained her clothes, realizing she needed cleaning and care. He noticed her clothing marred with blood, and felt she shouldn't spend the day looking like that, taking her hand to lead her to his nearby home where he could offer her a clean outfit. Milfy paused, refusing to go, thanking him for his concern, and insisting she had enough clothes, feeling her current appearance was better than last week when she killed a monster herself. Galbers froze in astonishment, struggling to believe this delicate girl had managed to kill a monster. He asked her name, and she bowed respectfully, introducing herself as the daughter of Count Marschleider. Galbers laughed warmly at her excessive formality, and Milphie was puzzled by his sweet laughter, as she hadn't expected such features on someone with his severity. He told her he had heard a lot about her, and was not surprised by her knowledge of the monster world, as she was known throughout the kingdom as the girl who eats its meat. In this world, there were savage creatures, monsters, and plants infused with poisonous magical energy, making them dangerous to humans and animals, causing sickness, fever, and intense pain. Therefore, people were used to disposing of their meat. However, Milphie was passionate about it, seeing it as a unique culinary challenge. Since he knew her story, she found no reason to hide, excitedly telling him she loved monster meat. He asked her, with an evil glint in his eyes, if this monster was edible, and Galbers blinked in shock. She realized she had crossed a line, settling for a shy smile. He looked at her, feeling a strange contrast, a mix of innocence and allure, and felt a burning curiosity toward her. She was a girl unafraid of blood, monsters, or even him. He hid his face so she wouldn't catch him admiring her, then took her hand, walking away from prying eyes. Milphie felt a flutter she hadn't experienced before, for this was the first time a man who didn't fear her, or dislike what she said, had touched her hand. He suddenly asked if the monster meat she spoke about really was delicious, as she had tasted Bekron herself. Milphie hesitated, used to being seen as strange when she answered, but said that Bekron meat was similar to veal in flavor, even better when cooked properly. Galbers nodded, reminding her that if the beast was not killed in a fit of rage, its blood stayed pure from toxins, so it didn't harm those who ate it. She was amazed at his precise knowledge, as she had never found anyone discussing this with sincere passion. She was profoundly touched and felt a silent joy. It was the first time she found someone who understood her and spoke her language. She explained that removing the magic from monster meat was necessary before cooking it, which required fully draining the blood and using precise dissection tools with specific spells to cleanse the meat. Galbers listened attentively until he said something that felt like the sweetest words she had ever heard. He expressed his desire to taste this meat she spoke of, and wanted to eat it made by her hands. At that moment, Milphie's heart froze with joy, unable to believe that a man of his stature would ask her for something the whole world scoffed at. She voiced her concerns about the risk of his digestive system being affected if he ate monster meat, clarifying that Bikoron had a huge amount of magical toxins that were hard to digest because those creatures were wild, but it was different if the monster wasn't angry, as the meat would be close to ordinary meat. It could be skewered or sliced into thin pieces. Galbers was filled with excitement, determined to try Bikoron meat, unable to suppress his craving for the tasting hour. Milphie noticed his smile contrasting sharply with his usual severity, and understood that this smile stemmed from years of violence and battles he had endured. It came from his heart. Inside her, there was a feeling similar to joy, because she had finally found a partner who shared her obsession. Galbers led her, holding her hand, toward their tents, asking her to set foot on the ground and relax. A man with a patch over his eye welcomed her return and asked about the guest, so Galbers presented Milphie's lineage to Count Marschleider. The mutual respect solidified, and Galbers asked for new clothes for the lady. Milphie entered the tent, eagerly inspecting the place, where she found a wooden basin filled with water that Galbers had prepared for cleaning. An internal dialogue sparked within her regarding what was appropriate, and she suggested that Galbers wash his face from the blood first before anything else. She was shocked when he removed his shirt, and their feelings of embarrassment became mutual. Milphie felt a wave of curiosity when she had the chance to observe the body of a knight trained for combat since childhood, recalling a moment when she noticed the skill of his hands as he expertly severed the neck of a beast. They shared the bath, washing their hands together, and Milphie's desire grew to become strong enough to cut the throats of monsters herself to eat afterward. She saw training as a means to achieve her dream. Galbers doubted her weak hands could accomplish such a feat without extensive training, but he didn't dismiss the possibility of learning and practice. The embarrassment between them eased, and a promise formed that he would be the one to hunt the monsters for her to cook. A sparkle shone in her eyes. The question she had long awaited became a reality. Their hands intertwined as Galbers wiped the blood from her face, and she helped clean him. When chaos interrupted like a spoil sport, complaining about Galbers sitting shirtless in front of a girl, but that did not dampen the day's joy. Galbers returned, proudly holding the head of the beast, which he found to be the most exciting sight, and everyone was stunned by Milphie's admiration for it. Milphie climbed onto the carriage, heading home after a busy day, and offered him a food box containing pieces of the beast's meat. Galbers took a piece and tasted it, while Kaios worried about the necessity of having monster meat tested for toxins before anyone consumed it, fearing the effects of lingering magical poisons. Galbers told Kaios to be quiet and taste the food first before judging, and he put the piece of meat in his mouth. As they both chewed, astonishment washed over them from its incredible flavor, far exceeding their expectations. Milphie looked at them in disbelief that her story had transformed from that of a girl feared by others to a noblewoman sharing her passion with one of the greatest men in the kingdom. Tears of joy filled her eyes from the kindness and acceptance she had never known before. She felt her heart walking down a new path, discovering the nature of that man, said to be a terrifying, bloodthirsty villain, hiding beneath his harsh features a mysterious beauty she had only seen in her dreams. She hesitated with the thought that she had allowed her dreams to rise above what she was used to, and possibly she was falling for him without knowing it. After this meeting between the monster-eating princess and the blood-crazed duke, Milfi returned to her family's palace, her heart overflowing with joy and confusion at the same time. She didn't know if that man had truly seen her as she was, or if he would accept her madness and strange passion. His presence in her life was a beautiful curse that made her forget her fear of people's gazes. As someone approached her for the first time without dread, she was searching for meaning in life, not realizing she would find it in the eyes of a bloody man, said to live only by killing, but that gaze exchanged with her shattered every barrier she had built around her heart to achieve a hidden purpose still undisclosed. When she arrived at the palace, uncertainty flooded her between the voice of reason and the call of her heart, until she spotted her father, Count Marschleiter, signaling to the carriage from a distance, ordering her to stop. He approached angrily and violently opened the door, directing a stream of reproaches toward her, asking what she had done, and she thought his anger stemmed from her failure to attract a suitor from the nobleman's party. But she was shocked when she learned the reason was deeper than that. Her father told her that her standing did not permit her to approach a great duke, then surprised her by saying that Galberis had asked for her hand in marriage. She stood stunned, unable to believe it, while her father was confused, unable to refuse or accept, as he knew that turning down a duke's request could bring disaster upon him. As for Milfi, she continued to stare at him, unsure who among them should be afraid, still reeling between shock and astonishment. During their conversation, the crown prince and Galberis's adopted brother appeared. Galberis explained that he had sent his hunters into the cursed forest to catch a beast for a bride's dowry, but they had gotten carried away and ventured deep into the monster's territory, facing the fiercest and most poisonous ones, yet they all returned safely with a rare magical prey. Maxim spoke with a tone, mixing teasing and admiration, bridging the gap between him and his brother, urging him to treat him simply as before. However, Galberis remained reserved, bringing to mind the memory of the 17 years that had separated them since the royal family adopted him and named him when he became Duke Orsteed, while Maxim retained the title of Crown Prince. Maxim wanted to break the formality Galberis imposed, so he asked about the food basket in his possession, jokingly inquiring about its contents, then tasting a piece of dried meat. Astonished by its exquisite flavor that surpassed the palace's table, he asked about its type, and Galberis replied that it was meat from poisonous flying monsters called skart, which surprised him with its deliciousness instead of repulsing him, and he admitted it was 100 times tastier than veal. He promised to keep it secret if Galberis gave him another piece, knowing that the mysterious noblewoman the rumors spoke of was the one who created it. Galberis felt uneasy when he heard Maxim describe her as greedy, a word that had always pained her from people's mouths, so he corrected him, saying she was Milfi, the daughter of Count Marschleiter. The prince looked at him with a deep gaze, understanding that this relationship wouldn't be simple. It surpassed mere admiration. Nevertheless, he said in a lenient tone that he gave him permission to do as he pleased, as long as he was aware of the consequences of his steps. Galberis confidently replied that he had considered everything, and he would halt hunting trips until he returned. He left feeling unsettled, embarrassed by his brother's teasing, while Maxim stood contemplating the strangeness of what he had heard. Galberis remembered the moment Milfi stood before the monster bravely, blood covering her face without detracting from her beauty. Rather, it added a mysterious charm that sparked an irresistible fascination within him. He brushed off what was said about her. Her presence had enchanted him from the first glance. Meanwhile, Kaios arrived with soldiers to announce that they had finally found the intended beast, a model from the rampaging forest. Galberis's face lit up joyfully as his awaited gift was ready. Kaios jokingly remarked that he was looking forward to the day Miss Milfi would share a feast prepared by her, being sure she would present a monster to her taste, which made Galberis feel more irritated by his teasing, doubting he was the one who spread news of his meeting with Milfi to the prince. Kaios ignored the accusation with a smile, and Galberis left alone, thinking of her. He feared she might have thought that his talk about the gift was mere flattery, or a polite gesture to please her, reminding him of her tears that he witnessed. He vowed to himself not to allow her to cry again, neither because of him nor anyone else. On the other hand, Milfi was gazing at a letter sealed with the royal family's Galberis emblem. She hesitated before opening it, her heart racing violently, as it had been delivered to her by a soldier riding a rare fire eagle from the kingdom's birds. She was captivated by the mention of the bird, having always dreamed of seeing it. Then she thought, as usual, about what it might taste like. But her father interrupted her daydream, reproaching her for being distracted from the content of the letter, reminding her that she was sent to choose a suitable fiancé, not to attract the attention of a duke of higher standing than hers. She recounted what happened at the party, and how she saved 2 old men before the beast attacked her, until the duke appeared and rescued her. She opened the letter, in which Galberis had written steadily that he met her and spent a short time with her, but found her worthy of a place befitting her, hence he requested her hand in marriage. She read the words in disbelief that the owner of that letter was the same man she had seen one day amid blood and silence. The quiet, shy, bloodthirsty man whose words had turned into soft rain on her heart. As for her father, he was searching for a way to refuse an official engagement proposal from a famous duke without hurting his pride or opening the door to conflict. Yet, Milfi paid no heed to his opinion. She took the letter to her room and reread it repeatedly, unable to tire of looking at its lines. How could a person who knew everything about her and heard what people said about her still want to be close to her? For her, it wasn't just marriage, it was a rare acknowledgement of her existence. She sank into her thoughts, picturing his face in her mind, the man who had approached her amid the blood, a blend of demon and angel in one form. His gaze pierced her heart as though he could read her thoughts before she spoke them. She knew her thoughts were strange, yet he alone accepted them. She sensed a strange attraction between them, as though he'd found in her someone who understood his nature, just as she understood the nature of beasts. To both of them, life had no meaning unless one found someone to share their passion with. Suddenly, a faint light glowed from the paper, revealing a second hidden message. Her heart trembled as she read, "After you left, boredom took over my days. The time I spent with you was the spring of my life. What saddened me most was hearing that others ate the meat you prepared. I heard winter has begun in your lands, and I will visit before the snow covers the roads on the 18th of this month." She took the letter to her father. They read it together in shock, exchanging conflicting looks. He was stunned by the Duke's boldness, while she was overwhelmed with joy. She realized the promised day was tomorrow. She felt that Galber's actions surpassed logic. A man risking his reputation and status for a woman known as the Beast Eater. Though her father's words began to plant seeds of hesitation in her heart, the letter still felt like a call from someone who truly saw her for who she was. She sat in her room surrounded by silence, held her mother's photo, and remembered her old advice to find someone who would love her as she was. She felt that wish had finally come true, yet one painful question remained. Would he accept the secret of her work at the research institute she inherited from her mother? She knew her mother's mission was not yet complete, and she had to keep walking her path till the end, whether Galbers loved her or not. The greater dream could only be fulfilled if she continued making beast meat the craft that was her passion, her life, and her inheritance. Milvy drifted into sleep and didn't wake until she heard the harsh voice of her stepmother, Shelia, shaking her as usual and reprimanding her for not dressing yet on the very day the family awaited their fate. Shelia looked at Milvy, her messy hair, tired eyes, a room buried in dust and clutter, clothes tossed everywhere. She sneered, saying that such a state did not suit a nobleman's daughter, that all she was good for was eating monster meat. Then, with mocking scorn, she added that when she asked her to find a suitor, she didn't mean someone as high as a duke like Galbers. The man who loved her, she said, was just like her, mad, beast-like, with a fondness for the scent of blood. At that very moment, a terrifying sound shook the castle walls. Milvy ran to the window and saw a huge black shadow descending from the sky. Galbers, riding a black dragon. He landed slowly, majestically beside her, telling her he had come as promised. She remembered his vow that he would bring her the gift himself, and he had fulfilled it in the most spectacular way. He landed the dragon in a secluded courtyard, and when she saw him, she felt something strange. Someone in her life could now face the world for her. Galbers hadn't waited for her reply. He had returned on his dragon, bringing with him a royal, priceless gift. A legendary beast for her to cook with her own hands. At that, her stepmother declared she would not attend their feast, insisting Milvy's father handle it, and that she would not meet a madman who rode a dragon. Anger flared in Milvy's chest. She firmly announced she had accepted his proposal and needed no one's permission. After dressing quickly, she went down to meet him. Galbers apologized for coming unannounced, explaining that he couldn't wait any longer. While Milvy was only thinking about her untidy hair she hadn't had the chance to fix. Caius also apologized for how they had entered the city, saying his lord couldn't bear to wait. Galbers scolded him for revealing what he meant to hide, then turned to Milvy, his face a mix of seriousness and warmth, asking about her messy hair. Her cheeks flushed red with embarrassment. He asked her to come with him so he could show her the gift. She was stunned when she saw before her eyes the royal beast she had once spoken of as a distant dream. She couldn't believe her innocent wish had become real. Galbers led her to the courtyard where the beast awaited, and it was the most magnificent sight she had ever seen. Before her stood the royal model, one of the rarest white beasts, but this one was different, golden-furred, gleaming under the light like a living treasure. Its fur was among the most precious, worn only by kings. Yet Milvy didn't see it as decoration, but as a grand feast wasted in the halls of the rich. To her, letting its meat go unused was unforgivable waste. Galbers stood proudly beside her, glowing with satisfaction. His gift was not merely a fulfilled promise, it was a clear declaration that he had come to ask for her hand himself. When he noticed her amazement and her assumption that the beast was still alive, he took her hand and placed it on his chest so she could feel the pulse of life within him, explaining that the beast was only asleep, subdued by a light spell. Her face brightened. The meat was still fresh, meaning its flavor would be better than ever. She began thinking out loud, debating whether to boil or roast it, make thick or thin slices, cook steaks, skewers, or even warm sandwiches. Her heart filled with a joy she'd never known before. At last, she stood before the dream she had chased for years. In her mind, she pictured a royal feast worthy of the new love blossoming in a kingdom that had never known one like it. She looked at Galbers gratefully, and their eyes met. Both felt caught in each other, each drawn to what they lacked in themselves. Her father arrived with the soldiers, thanking the Duke for coming so far. Though flustered, he saw in Galbers a man capable of understanding his daughter despite her strangeness and controversial passion. Milvy then asked her father's permission to let the Duke's dragons fly north to hunt. He was bewildered, wondering if the beast was meant to feed the dragons. She boldly replied that the beast was her meal, that Galbers knew everything about her and came to share her love for tasting the meat of monsters. Then she asked her father to allow them a visit to the research institute. The father grew nervous. He hadn't expected things to go that far. Galber stepped in to calm him, saying he knew all that was said about Milvi, but still came to ask for her hand, urging them to hurry. As if the beast awoke, it could threaten the entire northern kingdom. He added with a smile that he himself wanted to taste her cooking he'd heard so much about. The father, flustered, immediately ordered them to head to the institute before things escalated. Galbers and Milvi took off on their dragons toward the north, the winds filling them with the thrill of freedom. She laughed into the air around her while he spoke about dragons, saying they were magnificent creatures but not fit for eating. She smiled faintly, already thinking of something far beyond the journey. When they landed at the place, the Duke noticed a magic circle engraved on the stone floor in ancient lines. She explained that it was her mother's work, one her mother had developed through her experiments to prepare creatures for extraction. She led him inside, where she went to fetch a cloudy quartz bottle from among her tools crafted to draw blood and energy from the beings she studied. The Duke examined the instrument in silent admiration as she explained its capabilities and the way it could shift with its own power. Then she seemed suddenly excited and asked the Duke to cut off another creature's head. Milvi decided to begin preparing the beast, admitting it was hard to handle such a large body alone. The Duke motioned for his soldiers to help her, and the Knights of Galbraith got to work, skilled hands, sharpened by years of extracting horns, claws, and hides. When they finished, Milvi placed her palms on the creature's soft fur, admiring its luster and imagining what royal garments she could make from it. But she was more drawn to what the depths of the creature hid. She lifted her heart in a silent prayer out of respect for the life that would soon leave it. The circle beneath them glowed as she activated it. In a flash, the Duke's sword gleamed as he struck the beast's head, fell before she could even realize what had happened. Her eyes widened, amazed by the grace and precision of his movement. She raised the bottle over the shining light and began her chant, her voice steady as the crimson blood surged upward into the opening. The energy pulsed violently, making the bottle tremble and the light inside shimmer as if the glass would shatter. The Duke watched in awe as the liquid exceeded the vessel's limits. Milvi grew flustered. This had never happened before. No single bottle had ever overflowed with such energy, but stopping was too dangerous. When he saw her stumbling, the Duke stepped forward, asking how he could help. Without breaking her focus, she gestured for him to replace the bottle with another. He obeyed quickly, swapping the containers in one smooth motion. Milvi took a deep breath and continued her chant until the beast went completely still and the extraction was complete. When it was over, her strength faltered, and the Duke caught her, holding her steady in his arms until she regained her breath. She assured him the process was successful. He glanced at the creature's body, soft, glossy, free of rot, and expressed his admiration. She explained that she had learned to extract blood and energy without draining the flesh of moisture, keeping it fresh and intact. The Duke grew more impressed with the precision of her work and asked about the origin of her methods. She spoke of her parents' legacy, how her mother had invented the technique and refined it during a famine to make the creatures a source of survival for their people. Since her mother's death, Milvi had devoted herself to mastering the process in honor of her parents' work and to continue saving those who once starved. Yet, in her tone lingered a faint trace of guilty pleasure as she admitted her growing fascination with tasting the meat of rare creatures. The Duke's gaze stayed fixed on the glowing bottles as he wondered about Milvi's purpose in collecting the blood and energy. She calmly explained that she used them as fuel for fires to cook her meals and light her facility for months. Her words shocked him, but he smiled in admiration before revealing a chilling truth, that the energy in those bottles was powerful enough to destroy entire nations. Milvi was shaken, admitting she'd only ever worked with lower creatures and had never imagined such consequences. His expression softened as he reminded her how cruelty often twisted innocence into evil, promising to protect her from anyone who tried to harm her. His words hung heavy in the air, filling the space with charged silence until the tension slowly ebbed, and he made a playful remark about the rumors accusing her of drinking fresh blood. She denied it immediately, startled by the thought, while he stepped closer, fingers brushing a lock of her red hair, admiring its glow and the shimmer in her green eyes that caught the faint magical light around them, and confessed that they had captured his heart. She became flustered, trying to hide her blush, insisting there was no spell behind his interest. It was simply a natural reflection of how her hair reacted to the ambient energy around them. The tension eased into an awkward yet tender silence as they exchanged hesitant compliments, their words faltering, and the air growing warmer without confession. Then, in an abrupt moment of softness, the quiet was sliced by a sharp sound that jolted them back to seriousness. Milvi returned to her work, reminding him they needed to finish cutting up the creatures before being summoned to the castle. The Duke agreed and followed her lead. The Duke fed his dragon, while Milvi approached gracefully to inform him that royal permission for hunting had arrived. He expressed his appreciation, but noted that the royal creature's flesh wouldn't satisfy his dragon's hunger. Milvi reacted with playful surprise, asking if the dragon had actually complained. She found the thought both frightening and amusing. He admitted his dragon was insatiable, and almost as if to prove it, its stomach growled loudly. Milvi smiled and teasingly asked if he too was hungry. He replied that he had never felt such hunger before. Her gaze drifted toward a plate laid out with care, admiring the look of the delicious meat. The Duke agreed eagerly, saying he wanted to taste it fresh, not aged. They exchanged sly glances of playful challenge before deciding to cut a few pieces and roast them over the fire, freeing themselves from formalities. The Duke pulled out a small box of rare spices, which piqued Milvi's curiosity. She tasted a pinch and looked delighted by its flavor, as the aroma of herbs filled the air and the salt blended beautifully with the meat. He admitted he had stolen it from the head chef. It was a rare mix he'd been saving. Milvi smiled lightly, reminding him that they weren't tasting tasting food they were testing for poison. He nodded with mock seriousness. She sprinkled the spices and lit the fire, suggesting they cook it thoroughly for safety, while the Duke grumbled about the wait, calling it torture. When he thought the meat was ready, she calmly denied it, asking him to turn it again until it reached perfection. Just as they were about to taste the roasted meat, a loud noise broke the calm, throwing them off balance and stirring sudden confusion. The Duke grew irritated right away as he tried to dismiss Chaos, insisting whatever he came for could wait. But Chaos's sharp eyes caught the sight of the flaming meat and the smell of roasting that filled the air. A mischievous smile spread across his face as he asked sarcastically what their business was, while noticing their startled expressions. The Duke hurried to hand him the royal decree and told him to feed the dragons, but Chaos stayed put, pointing out that the dragons were growling in hunger while their master feasted alone. Facing the truth, the Duke reluctantly offered him a share. Chaos seized the chance and demanded more, forcing the Duke to give in. Not satisfied, Chaos turned to Milvi, suggesting that the knights who had long endured the tasteless monster meat deserved a chance to taste noble food. He joked that it was an honorable duty to test the meal before serving it. The smell of the meat grew richer as it cooked, sparking visible hunger in the soldier's eyes. The Duke held a plate of skewers, keeping the first piece for himself when Chaos approached, refusing it and choosing another one just to be safe. The Duke's face flushed as he clung stubbornly to the first piece, but Chaos kept teasing, reminding him it was the first dish Lady Milvi had ever prepared for him. The Duke grew irritated, accusing him of toying around, but Chaos laughed it off, claiming he was simply hungry for good food. Milvi handed Chaos a piece to taste. He took it without hesitation as everyone watched in suspense, then his eyes widened in delight. He declared the flavor exceptional, free of any gaminess, melting in the mouth with a richness like sweet wine. Milvi's face shone with happiness, while the Duke grumbled that the whole situation was pure torture, worried there might be hidden magic involved. He asked Chaos if he felt any harm, and Chaos confidently said it was perfectly safe, adding that it was nothing like the tough beast meat they were used to. Still, he warned that magical effects could be delayed, so the Duke reluctantly waited. Milvi explained she had never personally experienced magical poisoning, but she'd heard the symptoms could appear immediately or after a night. The Duke, impatient with waiting, grabbed Chaos and declared he'd had enough teasing and would eat himself. The soldiers, fired up by his words, quickly joined in, complaining that it wasn't fair for Chaos to enjoy it alone. Smiling warmly, Milvi encouraged them to eat before it got cold, reassuring them that she had remedies ready if anyone felt unwell, and that the palace would take care of them. The soldiers cheered with excitement, filling the place with shared joy. Everyone tasted the meat eagerly, astonished by its exquisite flavor. The Duke praised it, noting how it had no strong or unpleasant trace, while Milvi explained that it stayed tender even after cooling a bit, and that the creature's plant-based diet gave the meat a rich, fruity flavor. The Duke admired her genius, but she credited her late mother's research. He insisted she deserved the praise, admitting he never thought monster meat could taste so good after years of eating dry, bland food. The crowd grew impressed, with the aides asking to learn her method, and the knights suggesting they deliver their next hunt to her facility. Chaos smiled in agreement, though a hint of regret crossed him for all the delicious creatures wasted in the past. Milvi laughed softly, noting that few people truly understood her nature, and that some still considered eating creature flesh taboo among them. As everyone enjoyed the meal, the Duke couldn't resist the lingering aroma. He reached for another piece but froze when her gentle voice called his name. Flustered, he quickly made excuses, insisting he'd eat his dinner later. She just smiled and told him she was heading to the lab and invited him to join her. When they entered, the Duke stood amazed by how spacious the place was, and by the jumble of tools and papers filling it a kind of organized chaos that blended research and creativity. Milvi apologized for the mess, but he found it inspiring, calling it the perfect example of a scientist's workshop. His eyes fell on some sharp instruments fitted with spikes, and she explained that she used them in her traps to catch creatures. He was impressed by her cleverness as he watched her calmly prepare tea, then asked if the knights helped her with the hunting. She said that sometimes they did, sometimes she hired hunters from nearby villages, and sometimes she went alone. Her boldness surprised him, and he asked whether the count or the townsfolk opposed her work. She replied that she didn't go against their beliefs, but she was aware of the inner conflict they felt toward her and her mother's research, for even those her mother had saved from hunger had hidden the fact that they survived by eating the creature's flesh. The Duke understood her hardship and mentioned how, in his own kingdom, it was widely believed that eating the creatures was forbidden. Milvi admitted she wasn't brave, just devoted to continuing her mother's legacy. The Duke then asked why she insisted on pursuing a path her people rejected, and she reminded him of the tragedy that happened 17 years ago. He nodded sadly, remembering it as the reason he had been raised as a ward by another family. He gently took her hand and led her to the couch, saying that the story was easier told face to face. Once they sat down, he asked her to speak openly and inquired about the origin of the nickname the greedy demon people had given her. She hesitated for a moment, and he softly brought the conversation back to the reason for his visit and proposal, explaining that he knew much about her family. She admitted that her past and reputation made her a burden in noble society, but he dismissed the thought, insisting he didn't want her to give up her research, and that the Galbraith family could give her the freedom to continue her work without restrictions. He lifted his gaze to her and said he wanted to know her better, not just in her science, but as a person too. Melvi froze, unsure what to say. He went on, confessing painfully that he too had been called the bloodthirsty Duke, a man drenched in the blood of creatures who didn't see himself worthy of his title. Then he asked if she was afraid of him. In that moment, she realized with a trembling heart that when he'd said he wanted to truly know her, he'd meant her soul, the part of her that feared, just as he feared, and hid her own weakness, just like he did. Inside her, emotions clashed. She wondered if he truly saw her as a partner, or just a new experiment that sparked his curiosity. Her last question lingered in her chest. Would Galbraith stay with her once he learned everything about the Institute's research, her real goal, and the reason she inherited from her mother that made her eat the flesh of monsters? Would he still look at her with that gaze full of love and admiration, or would he see her as everyone else did? And when her mother's secrets and experiments were revealed before him, would he choose to share her vision, or run back to the shadows he came from? Milvi didn't care about Galbraith's harsh words about himself. She told him that it was impossible for her to call him frightening, and that she thought he was handsome, not scary at all. That made Galbraith feel extremely embarrassed. He asked her if she really thought so, and Milvi assured him that he was very handsome. She was excited, though she worried she might have hurt him with her words, so she kept praising him a lot. She told him that his beauty made her heart race, but Galbraith asked whether that made her feel afraid. Milvi told him again that it was wonderful for her, and at that point, Galbraith suspected she might be under a spell, but Milvi told him she had never forgotten his sharpness. Then Galbraith realized that Milvi was bothered by his roughness, but she told him that was natural for someone who hunts monsters, that his role was very important, and that fighting monsters meant it was normal for blood to splatter on him. Even so, Galbraith told her he lacked refinement, and that might bother her. But Milvi said she saw him as someone who brings peace not just to the people, but to the whole nation, and that in her eyes, he was very noble. Then Galbraith asked Milvi what she thought of him as a fiancé. She was surprised by the question, then began to imagine Galbraith as a fiancé, and thought that even at this stage, he would do well as a knight. Milvi told herself that Galbraith would be more than sufficient as a duke, though their social standings posed a dilemma. Still, she thought it would be perfect to have him around her all day long, and that this man would let her do whatever she wanted. Then she told him she'd answer his question. She said he would make a perfect husband for any girl, but wondered why he had chosen her. She added that the people would never accept her, since the vitalism faith wasn't common in Galbraith's country. But if he married the evil flesh-eater whom everyone avoided before she could finish, Galbraith interrupted her and said the people would welcome her warmly. Then he asked her if she knew the Irazini forest. Milvi replied that she knew the forest well, and that it was full of monsters, which surprised Galbraith since the more monsters he killed, the more appeared. He said he could dispose of their carcasses, but where monsters raged, magical energy gathered, eventually producing magical toxins. He said he had to keep hunting monsters to prevent that it was the fate of everyone who bore the name Galbraith. But to Galbraith, monsters were merely prey. That's why he was shocked when he heard Milvi talk longingly about eating them, and saw her prepare that royal dish. Her perspective on things was advanced. Galbraith admitted to Milvi that his people also ate monsters, but never thought it could be a method to drain them of their magic. Milvi hoped that wasn't her only strength. Galbraith asked her if she turned monsters into valuable sources of food. He said naturally people would welcome her then. Milvi realized her research might be useful to Galbraith. She told herself that if she could help someone, then her own research and her mother's research would finally be fulfilled, and that was all she needed. Galbraith told Milvi she wouldn't need anything as long as she was with him, that he would protect her from all evil, and asked her to use her vast knowledge to help the people. Milvi grew very excited and broke the contract agreement between her and Galbraith. Then she thanked him for his generous offer, telling him it was more than she deserved. That made Galbraith think she was going to reject his offer, but Milvi interrupted him and told him she agreed enthusiastically. She said that the most important thing for her was her research, and she could do anything a lady could do. She told him that if monster hunting was his duty, then she'd prepare delicious dishes for him without waste, and if that was enough, please, marry me right now. Then Claudia arrived and asked Galbraith to come with him to meet the Count at the castle they were waiting for him. Galbraith started walking with Milvi behind him, but Claudia stopped Milvi and whispered that she must not reveal her research to anyone she didn't know well. Then he told Galbraith he would lead the way. While they were walking to the Count, Galbraith remembered when Claudia had eavesdropped on his conversation with Milvi and thought again about how the bloody Duke had proposed to the Count's daughter. When they entered the Count's chamber, Galbraith asked for Milvi's hand in marriage and said it was a great honor. The Count told Galbraith that the news was very good for him, but what about the banquet incident? Galbraith told him that day had been very dull for him since he had killed monsters and been covered in blood, and when Milvi saw him, she wasn't afraid at all and didn't even look away. He knew that was surprising, and that even one of his own family members couldn't let go of that event. After the Count agreed, Galbraith asked him to sign the contract, but the Count explained Milvi's problem that she ate monster meat. Galbraith said he had no issue with that and, in fact, encouraged it. The Count signed the contract and told Galbraith he was very grateful that he admired his daughter, but Galbraith Galbraith told him it wasn't only admiration, he truly desired her. The Count then asked why he was looking for a fiancée when his family had already adopted many heirs for generations. Galbraith said that was a natural question, but the Count's answer would come in due time. Then he explained why he wanted her because she was attractive. The Count laughed, but then said that in this land, where the faith of spiritualism was strong, her fate was to live in shame. He had planned to send her to a convent. He had been forced to make many decisions, yet his status as a count prevented him from doing everything he wanted. Even though he was her father, he couldn't protect her. But Galbraith gave the Count his word. Once Milvi joined the Galbraith family, he would protect her, and asked him to rest assured and leave it to him. 10 days later, Milvi gathered her belongings to move to Galbraith's mansion. She also collected everything related to her research, as Galbraith had asked. Galbraith cast a powerful enchantment on their engagement contract and assured Milvi not to worry about anything. He swore never to break their engagement, then held her hand and told her he wanted to match the sincerity and determination he saw in her, and asked her not to tell Caius, so he wouldn't grumble at her. Then the Count asked Galbraith not to mention that detail to Milfi, but Galbraith thought that the Count was the one spreading rumors about the greedy witch among high society, deliberately tarnishing their reputation to protect her from those who wanted to exploit her research into evil. At that point, the Count admitted he had gone too far, but Galbraith asked him to try to limit that in the future. Then Milfi asked what they were talking about, but they didn't answer her. Milfi then went to her room, and one of the servants came to tell her that the royal model was ready for transportation, and that the dragons would carry the frozen cargo through the air. This made Milfi very excited. She thanked Mulan and told him to make sure everything stayed frozen. Then Mulan asked her, what about the golden fur belonging to the royal model? Milfi decided to leave it in place, saying she would sew warm coats for her father and his son. After that, Mulan left and Milfi thanked him again. Milfi looked at the remaining items and saw she was nearly done, but for a moment she thought about how quickly she would be moving in with her fiancé. She wondered if this was how it usually went for engaged or married couples. Then she remembered what Galbraith had told her, that the winter in Martial Red was very long, and he didn't want to wait until spring. She came back to the present and said she had to get ready to meet his family. Then she held her mother's picture and wondered, how was it for you, mother? She missed her very much. After that, one of the servants entered and told her that Galbraith was waiting for her. Milfi asked the servant, Herman, to take good care of the Count, and Herman assured her he would. She then left the room, taking one last look before going, unable to believe she would never return there again. She then went to her father's room, knocked on the door, and entered only to find Shilia inside. Milfi asked her what she was doing there. Shilia replied that she was Milfi's stepmother and had to say goodbye to her daughter before her wedding, then added that the smell of dragons was disgusting. Milfi asked where her father was, and Shilia said he was outside organizing Milfi's luggage that would be sent to Galbraith's home. Shilia told Milfi not to leave any of her belongings behind, but Milfi said she would leave the golden fur, and asked Shilia to use it to make clothes for her father and his son. But Shilia scolded Milfi, accusing her of seducing Galbraith into marrying her. She also told her that if she and the Duke had a child, Shilia's son would be the only heir to the family. Milfi told her that she had married outside the family, and would dedicate her life to serving the Galbraith family. This angered Shilia, who told her she was just like her mother, always keeping the best for herself. She said she couldn't stand her mother and couldn't stand her either. She threatened Milfi that if she ever broke off her engagement, she'd have no home anymore and would be sent directly to a convent. But Milfi had already considered that possibility. Then Shilia told her she was done talking and asked her to leave because she couldn't stand the smell of dragons. Milfi left the room feeling sad, though she didn't really care. At least she had heard her mother's name one last time. Then she went to her father, and the Count asked her if she was ready. Milfi said she was. She had packed everything and was wearing her mother's coat. She also remembered her mother and asked her father if her mother had made it during winter, right? The Count confirmed that, saying she had seen her first snow in that city and was so excited she got sick. She always behaved like a child, he added, before apologizing. But Milfi asked him not to. Then Galbraith arrived, flying down from the sky. He told Milfi he came for her. Milfi stepped toward him, and Galbraith kissed her hand and asked how she was, making her so shy that the Count laughed at them, surprised by Galbraith's boldness. Galbraith then told the Count he truly loved his daughter. He asked Milfi if she had finished packing. She said yes. He then asked if she wanted all those things, but Milfi didn't really want them. He asked if he should burn them, then held her hand firmly, and told the Count he would take Milfi with him. The Count said goodbye to his daughter and told her they'd see each other in the spring, but Galbraith told him she might not be able to come back by then. The Count asked about the items that must be arranged with the Galbraith family for the wedding, but Galbraith said he would send him everything needed. Milfi was surprised by his words. Then they flew high with the dragon. The Count said to Galbraith that there were many things they needed to discuss, but Galbraith told him not to worry. He would protect Milfi, since he had both the strength and the status to do so. He added that burning the waste would be a dull task for them, so since he was in a good mood today, he'd take care of it himself. He burned everything, but Claudie thought Galbraith had gone too far, and Galbraith asked him to forgive him, inviting him to serve the Galbraith family, promising to make a special place for him. Claudie refused firmly, leaving Milfi very surprised. After everyone was amazed by the fire that Galbraith had caused, Galbraith was having a conversation with Melfi while they were flying on the dragon's back. Then Galbraith asked Melfi if she would miss home, but Melfi would naturally miss it, however she wanted to see a better future with him as well. Galbraith advised Melfi to act naturally in Galbraith's castle, and what was required of her as a wife was to appreciate and comfort her husband. But Melfi didn't know if she was capable of doing this or not. However, Galbraith embraced Melfi and told her that she would be fine, and that he felt at peace with her now, which made Melfi feel very shy. Then Galbraith told Melfi that he enjoyed hearing her talk about monsters, and told her that it was easy to search for monsters in Galbraith City, and that he would hunt monsters for her, which amazed Melfi. But Galbraith also told her that the knights who had tried the royal model apparently spread the news, and that all the men were eagerly waiting to see what other monsters she would bring, which made Melfi feel very happy about this, and she said to herself that the Duke was a very nice man. While they continued flying, Melfi saw the place from above, outlined in red, and told Galbraith that it was very good. But Galbraith told Melfi that it was like the color of her hair, and that it was beautiful. But Melfi said it wasn't that beautiful. But Galbraith told her about when she was using magic, which made her hair shine, and that he was very fascinated by this. He put his hands in Melfi's hair and told her she was beautiful, which made Melfi feel very embarrassed when he touched her hair. Then night fell on them, and Melfi continued to be amazed. But the dragons had light in their heads so they could recognize each other's locations. But while they were on their way, they passed over some town, and the townspeople saw the dragons as meteors in the sky. Galbraith told Melfi they were going to retired fortress on the border, but he told her not to worry because she felt worried when he told her about a fortress. But Galbraith reassured her and told her he would find her a room where she would be comfortable. Melfi wondered if there were rivers and forests on the border, and would they have breakfast and dinner tomorrow in the open air. But it was obvious that Galbraith misunderstood her, and that she became very excited because Melfi thought this would make feeding the dragons simpler and easier. But Galbraith thought that dragons only needed a place to sleep, and only carried field rations, and thought that Melfi preferred the city. But Melfi asked Galbraith not to worry about her, and also told him that fish monsters are abundant now because this is their breeding season, and there might be monster fruit in the forest as well. And if they had monsters she had only seen in books, she also wanted to try them, which made Galbraith laugh about the fish monsters, and told her that there were Xanas in the river at this time of year, which surprised Melfi because they didn't have Xanas in their country, and she would like to try one if Galbraith could catch it. But Galbraith told her that it needed a tight ambush in pulling them from the water, which made Melfi despair because she learned that catching Xanas would take a long time. But Galbraith asked Melfi not to despair, because at this time of year the night is very long, and he would set up an ambush for her tonight and check it tomorrow morning. Melfi asked Galbraith if he was serious, but Galbraith saw that a hot and fresh meal was better than pre-prepared rations, and that he was looking forward to breakfast tomorrow. But Melfi remembered Kaio's words to her that their knights had eaten nothing but terrible monster meat until now. Then she returned to the present and asked Galbraith if he had cooked any of the monsters he had killed before, but Galbraith told her that she wouldn't call it complete cooking because it was rancid and tough, and he told her that they would resort to it on long missions when they felt hungry, and that they would grill it so as not to hurt their stomachs, but in the end they would suffer because of their stomachs. But Melfi thought that they had eaten it without removing the toxins from it, and asked him if he knew what type of monster he had eaten. Galbraith answered her and told her that it was a Beluvia, and that they were rancid and some of them were basically inedible, and this couldn't be considered food, and it seemed that it was surrounded by very burning fire, and its inside was like mud. But he lost consciousness, and didn't remember if he had drunk it in his state of extreme hunger. After they reached the retired fort, he asked Melfi to hold on to him tightly, and began the rapid descent. While the knights were talking with the guards, Galbraith asked Melfi to unpack the goods she would need in this place. While Melfi was doing this, Galbraith approached her and told her that it wasn't too late to enter the town, and that he had lost his mind when he thought of allowing her to stay here for a night. But Melfi didn't feel annoyed by this at all, and told him that this fort reminded her of her research center, and it was normal for her to sleep on the ground, and in addition to this, he would be with her, and there was nothing to worry about. Then they moved to Melfi's room, and Galbraith asked her to rest from the journey, but Melfi told him that she didn't feel tired because he had provided her with magic. Then Melfi smelled a strange odor and began following the smell, then told Galbraith about the presence of something not good. Then she went to the kitchen, which led to the servant's surprise at her presence, and one of the servants told her that she shouldn't be here. But Melfi asked the king's permission, then told them you are cooking thin porridge, and told them that it wouldn't fill them up. But she put her things on the table and showed them royal mudel meat, which led to the servants' amazement. Melfi told them it was salted royal mudel, and told them she was very sure of this. But one of the servants called Zeth asked if this was the meat of the golden beast, but Mulan asked his friend not to frown because Melfi brought this meat for them. Melfi asked Zeth, "You weren't present during the tasting, were you?" Then Zeth asked Mulan if he was sure that he and Mr. Kaios hadn't lost their minds, and Mulan was sure of this. Then Melfi cut the meat and put it on the fire to remove the toxins from it, and asked Zeth to try it. But Mulan asked Melfi that he also wanted to try, but Zeth couldn't believe he he would eat this, but Mulan told him he would miss many things if he was pure. Then Melfi prepared his portion of meat and gave it to him, and when Mulan ate his piece, he liked it very much, and said it was very delicious and fresh too. But the servants heard Galbrus's voice, which led to their shock, and Galbrus also asked Melfi that he wanted to eat from it. Melfi approached Galbrus and told him about his portion being available too, and held him, and after she asked him to eat, but Galbrus refused because she hadn't fed him first. But Melfi thought about how to feed him like the maid used to do with her little brother, and that she used to call his name until he looked at her. When she did this, Galbrus looked at Melfi, and she immediately fed him the meat. After Galbrus ate, Melfi asked him about its taste, but Galbrus told her it was good. Then Zeth ate the meat after that, and Melfi also asked him about its taste, and Zeth told Melfi it was very good. Then she said to them, if we're going to cook them together. Then she asked Zeth and Mulan to cut the meat into small pieces, which made them very excited. Then everyone moved outside to eat the food that Melfi brought, but Melfi was happy that everyone was happy. But Galbrus told her that they were happy because of the food she prepared, and that it was a dish with a good smell, and asked her if she did something different, but Melfi had cut the meat and fried it on low heat. When Galbrus fed Melfi, Melfi told him that she could feed herself, and asked him to try the salted meat, but Galbrus refused, and told her he wanted to feed her. But Melfi saw that Galbrus was insistent and ate the food from his hand, and told him it was delicious, and asked him that she would eat the rest alone. But Galbrus didn't agree, and asked her to eat from his hands once more, until she finished her plate. After that, Galbrus asked Melfi to talk to her about an important matter, which was to call him less formally, which led to Melfi's surprise about this. Melfi called him Duke, and Galbrus thought this was better, and told her that according to Kaios, all engaged couples use each other's names or endearing terms. But Melfi told him that her parents used to call each other by their names, but Melfi felt embarrassed when calling him like that, and that she wasn't used to it, but told him she would get herself used to this. But Galbrus suggested that she call him by his title, but Melfi called him Roger, which led to his eyes turning golden, which amazed Melfi, and she told him that his eyes had changed, and asked if he was okay. She asked for help from one of the assistants. When Mulan approached them, Galbrus said he was fine, and that he had lost control of his magical power for a moment. Melfi thought and said to herself that this happened to him because of the meat she fed them, but Mulan tried to reassure Melfi about Galbrus, and told her not to worry, and that Galbrus's magical power was great, and that he could store it more than any ordinary person, and would get better when he released some of it. But Galbrus told Melfi he was fine, and that he would go hunt Xanus. But Melfi discovered that Galbrus's power was stronger than any ordinary person, and that both monsters and humans have magical power inside them, and when it accumulates and crystallizes inside the monster, it secretes toxins and drives them to madness. She remembered her mother and wondered, will Galbrus end up like her mother? She felt sad then. Then Melfi remembered her mother when she was bedridden, and Melfi's mother told Melfi that there are people who have frail bodies, but she was born with great magical energy in her body, and when this energy increases, it makes her sick in bed. Melfi asked her mother, do you feel severe pain? But her mother told her she was fine, but Melfi's mother died, and everyone was sad about her. But Melfi began reading books, and discovered that the magic circle she extracted from the monsters accumulated inside her body, and turned into toxins because she couldn't break it down. Her mother's magic was wonderful, and when used, her hair would glow red, and she looked like a fairy from a fairy tale, and Melfi loved watching her very much. Melfi continued learning afterwards, and discovered that humans cannot tolerate the toxins of monsters, and that their bodies would collapse before they lost their minds. But while she was studying, she fell into a big pit, but she promised that she would complete her research to save Galbrus. Then she returned to the present and that she was dreaming and woke up from sleep, and was surprised that Galbrus's coat was on her. Then she imagined that she slept on the ground and that the Duke found her and carried her, and she saw that this was very embarrassing. Then Melfi went to Galbrus, and Galbrus said to Melfi, you have already woken up. Then Melfi asked Galbrus about his condition, but Galbrus apologized to her because he caused her worry, and thought she was surprised because he didn't tell her. Then Melfi asked Galbrus that the magic power hadn't crystallized inside him, right? But Galbrus hugged Melfi and told her he was fine, which led to Melfi feeling embarrassed. Then Galbrus approached Melfi and told her that he also wasn't suffering from any fever, but Melfi felt very embarrassed, but put her hands on his head and told him it was cold as ice. But Galbrus was like this because he dipped himself in river water. But Melfi asked Galbrus once more, are you sure you're okay? And that he might get sick if he stayed cold like this. But Galbrus told her that she was examining him, and this was something that brought him warmth. But Melfi told him to wear his coat better. When Galbrus wore his coat, he told her that he had hunted something unexpected for her. But Melfi told him that his health was more important than the Xanas. But Galbrus hugged her once more, and told her they would be warm like this, and that they would take a quick look at it, and he was happy. Melfi asked Galbraith, haven't you killed the Xana's fish you caught yet? Galbraith confirmed that he hadn't killed it yet, and that it was still in the fishing net, but Melfi strongly wanted to cook it after it was killed. Galbraith agreed with this idea very much, but Melfi saw that Galbraith needed rest because he hadn't slept well. However, Galbraith told Melfi that he felt comfortable with her by his side, and told her that her hair was very soft, which made Melfi feel very embarrassed. She told Galbraith that she was very dirty, but Galbraith was also dirty and hugged her. Then Zeeth came to them, and Melfi said she was happy he came at this time, which also embarrassed Zeeth. After that, Melfi was pleased that everyone was present and told them that she would cook them Xana's fish today. She asked them who could bring oil and flour to use in cooking. Here Zeeth said he could bring them, and Melfi felt very grateful to him. Then Melfi went outside and went to Galbraith and told him she was ready to go with him to see the Xana's fish. But Galbraith asked Melfi if she was prepared, but Melfi showed him a paper with magic circles drawn on it and told him that this helps her too. Galbraith thought this was an interesting idea. Galbraith asked Melfi if she would stick this paper on the Xanas. Melfi said, of course, because water would wash away a circle drawn on the ground. Then they moved to the lake, and Galbraith asked Melfi to step back a little and asked the soldiers to pull the net and told them to be careful because it's a fish like a monster. The soldiers pulled the net repeatedly until they were able to get the fish out of the lake. Melfi was extremely amazed when she saw it, and that it wasn't like what exists in the pictures of the books she had read, and that if she was bitten by its teeth, a part of her would be severed. Here Galbraith, while using his magic, asked Melfi to be careful. Then Galbraith asked, should he cut off its head now or what? Melfi said no, we should kill it with this blade that was made in Galbraith's city. She raised the blade but couldn't control it well because it was heavy. Galbraith asked Melfi if she intended to do this alone. Melfi said she wanted to do this but didn't think she was capable anymore. Galbraith took the sword from her and told her, I told you before to leave the hard work to me. Melfi remembered when Galbraith said in the past to leave the fighting to him. Then Galbraith advanced to the fish and asked Melfi to tell him how to do this. Melfi said first you must blind the fish because fish don't move in darkness. When Melfi did this, the fish stopped moving. Then she asked Galbraith to stab the back part from the eye and above the gills, then twist the blade. When Galbraith was well prepared, Melfi told him, now do it. Galbraith stabbed the fish, and Melfi told Galbraith that when he removes the cloth, he must twist his blade. Galbraith actually did what Melfi asked of him, which killed the fish. After that, Melfi asked everyone to step back and leave the rest to her. Then Melfi stuck the spell papers on the fish and cast her spell and extracted all the blood from the fish until the bottle was filled. Then she gave the bottle to Galbraith. Melfi wanted to remove the head, organs, and scales too. Then she asked Galbraith to teach her how to do this so she wouldn't have to ask him every time. But Galbraith smiled and said he had cut off many monster heads. But he didn't have the same enthusiasm that Melfi possessed, and he doesn't enjoy it unless he's cooking monsters with her. Melfi was also happy cooking with him, and with everyone too, and she remembered when she was in her city, she used to do this, and her research alone too. When the soldiers lifted the fish, Melfi said excitedly, let's go cut off the head and organs too, which also excited the soldiers. After that, the fish was placed on a wooden box, and Galbraith was ready to cut off the head, but he asked Melfi how to do this. Melfi said, you should start from the left side of the place where you stabbed it before. Galbraith thought this angle was difficult, but he used his strength and cut well, which encouraged the others for him. Melfi was also impressed and told Molin that Galbraith uses his sword very well, and that he was able to preserve the meat after cutting off the head. Molin was also very impressed, but Galbraith asked them, what are you two talking about? Melfi said they were talking about his sword skills, which made Galbraith feel embarrassed. After that, they removed the vital organs from the fish. Melfi told Galbraith that the organs and head are not edible. Galbraith knew this, and used fire magic to burn them, which also amazed Melfi from the fire. Molin told Melfi that Galbraith was the one who invented this spell to help people who have difficulty disposing of monsters. After that, they moved to the castle. Zeeth told them they couldn't cook inside because there was a problem in the kitchen. Melfi thought this was good for her because she hadn't cleaned the kitchen after cooking, and that the air would remove everything. Then she asked if there was anyone among them who could cut the fish and peel the skin from it. Ambry raised his hands and told Melfi that he does that almost daily. After that, Melfi asked Ambry to do that with the fish. Then Ambry peeled the skin and cut the fish well, which greatly amazed Melfi. Melfi said, of course, this is the caliber of Galbraith's men. Then she thought that cutting something you slaughtered so beautifully felt wasteful, but Ambry doesn't mind this. Molin thought if it was pounded and fried, it's suitable for him, and that they would eat until they were full. Melfi agreed with this and wished for everyone to help her, and the soldiers were very excited about this. After that, she placed 2 pots on the fire, and made the temperature of one stronger than the other, and that she would fry the fish in 2 stages. Galbraith asked Melfi if he could help her too. Melfi asked Galbraith to watch the hot pot please. Then Melfi explained how to pound the fish, and since they don't have eggs, she will mix spices with flour and will dip the fish pieces in the mixture, then start frying them in the pot and leave them until they become brown, then remove them from the pot, and that she will put them in the other pot so they don't dry out, but it will be for a short time, so they form a crispy outer appearance and are juicy inside, and this is how their Xanas will be ready. After that, each of them did something, but Galbraith couldn't keep them well in the oil. When he showed them to Melfi, he asked her to forgive him. But Melfi told him that everyone can't do it the right way the first time. She also told him that it's edible and asked him to feed her a piece of it. Galbraith thought it was a failure, and Melfi said no, it's very delicious, but her hands are sticky and she will taste it to test for toxicity. She opened her mouth for him to feed her, which made Galbraith feel embarrassed. But Melfi told him it's freshly fried, and also asked him to blow on one of them for her. Then Galbraith blew on one for Melfi, then fed her. When Melfi tasted it, she felt amazed by its beauty, and that the meat is very tender, and that the smell of the crispy and salty batter goes perfectly with the chewy meat. When Galbraith asked Melfi about the taste, Melfi said the meat is irresistible, and that the flavor explodes in her mouth when she bites it. Then Galbraith tasted it himself, and saw that it was very beautiful, and that Melfi was right that it's very delicious. Then Melfi was surprised that Galbraith finished half her food, which made her feel great amazement at this. Galbraith said there's no harm in adding more salt too. Then he suggested trying one of the successful pieces. Before trying it, Melfi asked him to let her taste it first to test for toxicity. But Galbraith tasted it and was amazed by its beauty too, and asked Melfi to try it too. Melfi said it's also very beautiful and fluffy too, and it's light so you can eat it forever. Galbraith suggested preparing both because there will be those who prefer one or the other. Then he asked Molen to try it, which made Molen happy. After that, they prepared both types, and the soldiers also tasted both types. After finishing, Melfi thanked Galbraith for helping her, and that she enjoyed it a lot because he was with her. Galbraith saw that what matters is that Melfi is enjoying herself. Then Galbraith asked Melfi, "Will we eat outside?" Melfi said of course, and that she asked the castle cook to bring vegetables and bread, and that they arranged things in the Great Hall. She asked Galbraith to go there and enjoy a delicious breakfast. Then she asked Molen to accompany Galbraith there so he could prepare the best meal for the man of the hour. Then Molen grabbed Galbraith, which annoyed Galbraith, but Molen told him no one else will eat unless you eat. Then Galbraith looked at Melfi, and Melfi told him she will come after disposing of the oil, and told him to add salt according to his taste. Then Mulan pulled Galbraith inside, and after that, Melfi thought that Galbraith did all of this for her, but she always tells him that she is excited to meet other monsters, but she must be careful and think about what he wants too. And when she was cleaning, Zeth and Embry came to her and told her that they would help her with the cleaning, and that 3 people are better than 1 person. And after that, Melfi presented them with meat and asked them what they thought about it. And she asked Zeth if Xana's was also, and Embry saw that it had a lot of oil in it. And Melfi told them that it was belly meat, and that it wasn't suitable for frying, so she didn't want to serve it to others. But Zeth said it looked appetizing to him and ate it, and Embry after eating it said it was very delicious too, and thought it would be tastier with sour fruit juice. And Zeth said he asked them to bring fruits for breakfast and maybe they have some there. Then Melfi said to them, "Let's hurry before the fruit runs out." And after that, they moved inside the castle, and the 3 of them prepared well to attack the food. But when they entered, they found many soldiers eating from the food they had prepared. Then Galbraith called out to Melfi to join him, and after Melfi joined him, he told her that they would fly after eating, and asked her to eat well. And Melfi asked Galbraith also to eat until full. Then Galbraith started eating, and Melfi discovered that this was another way to eat, and she imitated Galbraith, and found that it tasted very good, and that she could eat too without getting her hands dirty. Then Zeth presented the sour fruit they had talked about before. Then Melfi picked up one of them and put it on the meat, and when she tasted it, the taste of the meat became more beautiful, and she felt amazed by this, and that eating it became much easier, and that this would be useful for weak digestive systems or those with poor appetites. And Galbraith asked if it was delicious to this extent, and Melfi asked Galbraith if he enjoyed sour flavors, but Galbraith doesn't know because he only eats them when he drinks. And when he ate one of the meats with sour flavor, he felt annoyed, which made Melfi worried about him. But Galbraith told her he was fine, but the sourness makes one wake up, but it's okay. And Melfi said to herself that he doesn't like sour foods, and she must not make this mistake again. And Galbraith told her that he was enjoying himself with her very much. And after that, they prepared to leave. And Zeth and Embry told Melfi that they prepared food for them to eat on their way, and that they also froze and salted the remaining Xanas. And Melfi saw that this way it would last longer and thanked them, which made them happy. And while they prepared to leave, Galbraith said the road is very long to the city, and asked them to stay alert to avoid any accidents. Then they flew high, and while they were flying, Galbraith said to Melfi that they were on their way to Batum, and Melfi was excited to go to a completely new country for her.